Might need to do that.
Okay, Craig, you have the floor.
About to push this. Seriously?
It's already on.
It's already on.
I don't remember what I said. James Carr from Monroe, Happy New Year to you all. It's a pleasure to serve on the board. Thank you.
Craig Horn, Town of Weddington.
Hello, Brian Helms, Union County. Glad to be here. Glad to be with you folks tonight. Thanks for having me.
Dale Dalton, Mayor Pro Tem of Mint Hill.
Lee, welcome.
Thank you. Lee Altman. I serve on the County Commission, and I also serve on the Metropolitan Transit Commission with some good friends. So I'm excited to dive in even deeper with CRTPO on transit.
And you will. Rusty.
I'm Rusty Knox. I'm the Mayor Davidson, and I also serve on the MTC with my buddy next door to me here.
Maybe we should separate you guys a little bit. I mean, so, Dennis,
Dennis Bilodeau, Commissioner, Town of Cornelius.
Renee,
Renee Garner, Town of Matthews.
Tony,
Tony Lathrop, NC Board of Transportation, Division 10, Board Member.
and you can too.
Neil Burke, CRTPO Secretary.
And I'm Ron Pappas. I'm the mayor of the town of Waxhaw.
Good evening. I'm Lisa Qualls. I'm the Mayor Pro Tem with the Town of Mooresville.
David Cohn, Mayor of Indian Trail.
Joe Polino, Mayor of Village of Marvin.
Brad Stroud, Iredell County Board of Commissioners.
Ed Driggs, I chair the Transportation Planning and Development Committee on Charlotte City Council.
Rob Kidwell, Town of Huntersville Commissioner.
Jim Walker, Turnpike Authority Board.
I'm Brad Richardson, representing Town of Stallings as a council member.
David Boyce, Mayor Pro Tem of Russell Chapel.
Rick Becker, Town of Mineral Springs, Mayor.
Well, welcome, everybody. And yeah, I was getting really excited of the energy in the room and just kind of kick it in and go. We've got a good group here around the table. So thank you all for those introductions. Now I will turn it over to Mr. Neil. Neil, your turn.
Thank you. So I've been asked by the current chair to conduct the elections for the 2023 leadership for the CRTPO board. So we'll go ahead and start with the election for chair in 2023. And at this point in time, I will open the floor for nominations for the 2023 CRTPO board chair.
I'd like to nominate Ron Pappas for the chair.
And I saw Mayor Horn's hand. Is that a second, Mayor Horn?
That's a second. Yes.
Craig wanted to be first.
Bear with me. I only do this.
It went for losing. The big guy gets all the credit, you know.
I only do this once a year, so just bear with me. So the nominations were received. Do we have any other nominations? Okay, I do not see any other nominations for chair. Hearing none, nominations are closed for the chair. All those in favor of electing Mayor Ron Pappas as chair for 2023, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, at this point, we'll move on to the election of vice chair of the CRTPO board for 2023. At this point in time, I'll open the floor for nominations for 2023 CRTPO vice chair.
I would nominate Lisa Qualls.
Second.
I see the nomination from Mayor Knox and the second from Commissioner Rob Kidwell. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none, nominations are closed for vice chair. All those in favor of electing Mayor Pro Tem Lisa Qualls as vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Congratulations, Lisa.
And thank you all for your support during the last 15 or so months that the interim and myself have been here sitting in these seats. It's been one thing that noticeable. And again, as we entered the room tonight, the energy in the room was just fantastic. And we hope to continue that. We hope this collaboration of all of us will come to some good things happening for our board. And we are very satisfied and thank you for supporting us in this effort.
Ditto, Mayor.
Ditto, Mayor. All right. All right, so first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. So can I have a motion on that, please?
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Second, you guys are quick today. I like you guys. That's great. All right, we've got the motion and a second up. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now we're going to open up the public comment period. And here we have 3 speakers, I think, tonight. And so The first one, do we have Karen? Is it Fundley? Okay, very good. If you'd like to go up to the podium up there and hopefully you get on the microphone side, you get some assistance over there from our tech guru. And you've got 3 minutes to be able to do that. So just let him guide you and speak loudly and clearly right to us.
Hello, my name is Karen Sundley.
Come on up to it.
Cowboy Lane in Charlotte. I thought more would happen before I spoke.
We did
But,
that on purpose.
Who live there are very passionate about where we live, and it's very peaceful, it's very calm. It was part of,
You can come a little closer to
it's
the
part
mic.
of the unincorporated part of Charlotte. It used to be all farmland and everything, and you know, time is marching on. Anyway, we care very much about our neighborhood. And we're very concerned about the possible Fred D. Alexander Boulevard realignment and how it will most likely negatively affect our homes and our little neighborhood. My question is, do we really even need this thoroughfare? It's my understanding that it goes to North Lake Mall. It's my understanding North Lake Mall is in trouble. So do we even need it? I mean, it's slated for 2050. That's 27 years from now. Why are we talking about it? Makes me highly suspicious that we need to talk about it now. Let's see. And I think it would impact less or fewer property owners if you could just move that over, if you have to have it, to Miranda or to Kidd. Those are roads that already exist. You would hit less property owners. You wouldn't tear up our neighborhood. I mean, less property owners all the way up. You could connect back on Beatty's Ford and go straight up the middle like the map shows. Let's see what else. We are a 1-lane, 1-vehicle gravel road. That's all we are. And to move that right next to us is it's going to be in our backyard. This is a whole different issue, but you know, the Rock and K Ranch was sold and they're expecting 300 houses. Thank goodness that hasn't happened yet. Hopefully it won't anytime soon in my lifetime. We all who live on Cowboy Lane have wells and septic tanks. I am very nervous about how any construction would affect any of that because it is going to be right through the middle of one of our neighbors' yards and right up next to us. So it's very concerning. I promised my husband, who has since passed away, that I would live and die on Cowboy Lane. He purchased there in 1998. And this thoroughfare is gonna impact my promise to him greatly, I feel. We ask that you please consider what might be best for those of us who live on Cowboy Lane as you consider what is best for Charlotte's future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And if follow up on that, if we can have some communication between her and staff to address some of the questions. Just as a comment. So appreciate that. All right, next up, Missy Parker. There you go. Missy, welcome up to the podium. Get nice and close to it so we can hear you all.
I'm pretty loud.
Okay, we're good.
I have like 3 minutes worth to say, so I'm going to make sure everyone in this room hears me. That is for sure. So my name is Missy Parker, and I am a property owner of 4001 Cowboy Lane. My family has lived in this home for 60+ years. We are aware of the proposed road alignment created in the 80s for Fred D. Alexander Road. We were aware that this proposed road went through a neighboring landowner. We were not aware that the county would entertain moving it to harm other people's property value and lifestyle for the greed of a developer to obtain more spaces for his houses or for the buyers to obtain more money. Cowboy Lane residents are against the realignment and find it unfair that a developer has the ability to request a move to a whole road from the middle of the property they wish to purchase to border our property. If the buyer developer doesn't like where the proposed road is, maybe they should find somewhere else better suiting their needs. Not to move it to meet their needs and infringe on the Cowboy Lane Road residents' needs. Our lifestyle has already been greatly changed by the development requests and approvals. We literally have 800+ new houses being developed within 1 mile surrounding Cowboy Lane. With the immediate rapid growth popping up all this around us, it is reasonable to assume this road will get built before a conservative 2045 estimate in order to handle that increased traffic. I see that Fred D. Alexander Road construction has already started on Highway 16. The current housing construction alone will increase vehicle traffic by 1,200 vehicles. The housing projects have already affected my family as the developers harass us to sell portions of our property to create turn lanes to handle their impending development. Our city council government has got to do a better job of protecting the taxpayers and do less bending to the will of large land developers. Cowboy Lane has already been affected. Please do not move this road and make our homes we have worked so hard on to be unbearable to live in. This road will be 15 feet from my front door. I am an active community member. I volunteer food pantries, backpack programs, Angel Tree Children. I make sure the communities of my family are well taken care of. The families of my community are well taken care of. I'm a 30-year Girl Scout leader veteran. As a leader of our community, I am appalled at the lack of information provided to us about all these projects and developments that affect us and the lackadaisical attitude of, oh, it does not affect you. Yes, it does affect me. I see mature trees bulldozed down and replaced by seedlings of the same brand. Cowboy Lane is full of mature oak trees that would plow down to accommodate this road move. Leave the road where it's proposed to be. The location would not be ideal for Cowboy Lane when it is built, but it will be detrimental if you move it. I have spoken before City Council about this situation, and I'm hoping that our voices will be heard tonight. As an unincorporated area, we do not have any representation to help navigate the process and have repeatedly been overlooked as not important and looked over. The residents of Cowboy Lane are united in saying we do not want the Fred D. Alexander Road moved into from its current position, proposed location to be realigned next to Cowboy Lane. The developer wishing to purchase the property should use the land as it is, which would add another 80 to 100 to the 800 plus houses that are already proposed and approved in a 1 mile radius of Cowboy Lane.
Okay,
That is
Lucy, I'm going to
plenty-
have to cut you off. You do
Okay,
have a
I
lot
got
more
one,
to say.
wait. There's plenty of burden for Cowboy Lane to carry. I leave you with one very important question. Ask yourself this: would you want to live 15 feet from a 4-lane divided highway? If the answer is no to that, then that is the way you should vote to protect how I live.
Great.
Thank you,
Missy.
listening to the residents of Cowboy Lane.
Thank you. And same token, if we could just connect those property owners with some of our staff, if they would like to kind of get them more educated on the process. All right, next up, I have Janet Labar. Janet, welcome to the podium. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Janet Labar and I lead the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance. As the voice of business and the only regional economic development organization serving the city and 15 counties across both North and South Carolina, the Alliance regularly convenes stakeholders on priorities that impact and improve our region's competitiveness. Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chairman, and to all our members, thank you. Thank you for all you do to ensure thoughtful transportation planning across the region. Your responsibilities on CRTPO are recognized as additional time to your already busy schedules and as another commitment of service that benefits not only your constituents, but the broader public. As you begin a new year of planning and prioritizing projects, I wanted to offer the business community's insights on transportation and alternative funding sources for I-77 South. Businesses want certainty and the ability to move people and products effectively. And the region's business community values an exploration of ideas, creativity, and solutions in tackling mobility, especially for key transportation corridors like I-77 South. The conversations you're having lead to a decision by this group on whether NCDOT should conduct further analysis, which would include performing initial screening and conducting comparative analysis on how best to move forward. The business community welcomes your decision to allow for this analysis to take place. We're not asking you to take a position on anything else with regards to I-77 South right now. Rather, we respectfully request that you advance this vitally important discussion to the next stage in a 4 to 5 year process. Studying I-77 South to understand all viable options is the right decision and will give businesses, those who are already here, as well as those the Alliance and our partners work to recruit, a positive indication that the region is committed to managing growth. NCDOT funding limitations are not just a Raleigh problem. While the state and lawmakers have taken the admirable step of increasing the transportation budget, the shortfall remains. This is an us problem impacting everyone locally, from large employers, small businesses and commuters to parents, carpoolers, and out-of-town visitors. As our roads grow more congested, they become more hazardous. We now have two of the deadliest roads in the state, the I-77 South corridor and a portion of I-85 within our region. In the last 5 years, 85% of crashes on I-77 South were congestion related. We have to continue advancing ideas to ensure safer roads. And traffic is not our only concern. Our region is losing ground and our competitive advantage. In 2019, the region hit 53 annual hours of commuter delay. For perspective, economic growth rates begin to slow at 37 annual hours and economic growth stops at 180 annual hours. We've got to keep advancing ideas that widen our competitive edge. And I-77 South is not just a commercial corridor. 40% of the region's population lives within a 3-mile radius of this section of highway. And if projections are correct, 700,000 additional residents will call this 3-mile radius home by 2050. A football game can bring I-77 South to a halt, not to mention rush hour. So how do we update our infrastructure to plan for and then safely absorb that many people? Again, we have to continue allowing for ideas in advance of our dynamic growth. Without the application of NCDOT's resources and expertise to help with the analysis, there is no clarity in determining the best solution for I-77 South, and it's just too important of a corridor not to examine comprehensively. An additional 1.5 million people are estimated to be living in this region by 2050. Outside other options, the earliest we can expect any changes to I-77 South is 2045, and that projected delivery date is without a single delay in planning, financing, or construction, and surely we are wiser than this. Our community is depending on us to make sound decisions, so we support and ask to NCDOT to provide a plan B for consideration. You all have shown great leadership in never stopping the transportation conversation. CRTPO shows up, you listen, you debate, and I want you to know that the business community sees this, and we wholeheartedly say thank you. I-77 South is a critical corridor and deserves exploration. So please allow NCDOT to provide analysis and answers to this challenged area of our region. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, Janet. Appreciate that. All right, we'll move down to, I'm going to have Mr. Burke talk about the ethics awareness and conflict of interest. And you could also talk about the ethics clause.
Sure. In accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every board member to avoid conflicts of interest. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest with respect to any of the matters coming before the board today? If so, please identify the conflict and refrain from any participation in the particular matter involved. I do not see any conflicts amongst the board members, so I'll go ahead and just take a second to remind everybody. I sent an email out to the board last Friday regarding the requirements of all CRTPO board voting members and any voting members of an MPO across the state for that matter to file their statement of economic interest and real estate disclosure forms. For returning members, it should be a pretty easy process, and we recommend you do that electronically. For new members, it's still pretty easy. It's something you can file both forms within 20 minutes. We have a great ethics liaison, Suzanne Singh. I've copied her on the email. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to her, reach out to me. The deadline is April 17th. And please read that email I forwarded you from Suzanne. There's a lot of helpful hints in there that'll help make filing both of those forms pretty easy for you all. So looking forward to seeing compliance across our board here pretty soon, well before the April 17th deadline.
Thank you. Don't wait, get it done. It sneaks up really fast like everything does. So go ahead and get online. I think the link is on your email to be able to do that. Those who haven't done it already. So appreciate that. All right, we're going to move to the consent agenda today, since we didn't have any changes to the adoption of the agenda in total. I'm going to look for a motion to adopt tonight's consent agenda as published.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Motion's up. All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. All All right, next item up, there's some action required. So we have Andy up there. He's already running up to the podium, which is great. This is on the Fred D. Alexander Boulevard alignment, CTP amendment. So the floor is yours.
All right, good evening, Happy New Year. Again, I'm Andy Grimsby, Charlotte DOT. I'm going to bring this item to you. You've heard from Ms. Sundley and Ms. Parker. So I'm trying to answer some of the questions that they brought up. If you have other questions at the end, please feel free to ask. I was at your November meeting to open public comment, and now we're bringing back the item for action. So this is the action requested today to approve an amendment of the future Fred D. Alexander Boulevard alignment in the CRTPO Comprehensive Transportation Plan as requested by the Charlotte Department of Transportation. I'll go into a little background. Fred D. Alexander is a proposed road that is kind of in between the area between 45, 77, and 85. This is a rapidly growing area, as was mentioned by the speakers. And we need to provide a more robust network over time so that not everybody is going to have to go on the existing roads. We need to kind of provide more options as this area grows. City of, this is the corridor. It goes approximately from, like I said, from 85 towards 77, kind of splits up the area between 45 and the 77 area. A portion of the corridor shown in blue was constructed by the city of Charlotte a few years back, opened into traffic in 2012. The remainder in red would be built by either the NCDOT or the Charlotte Department of Transportation, which is yet to be determined. City of Charlotte has submitted the northern portion of this corridor inclusion in both the 2045 and the 2050 MTPs or Metropolitan Transportation Plans, but it was not included in those plans. So that means at this point, it is not expected to be funded by the NCDOT prior to 2050. The portion we'll be talking about tonight is in the portion shown in the blue oval. So this map shows the alignment as shown to you at your November meeting. The development triggering the realignment, as was mentioned by the speakers, is shown in blue. The map also shows the existing alignment in orange, and the proposed alignment for you tonight is a dashed blue line. One question was, what is the need for this? And as I mentioned, this is a rapidly growing area, and there's not a lot of connectivity between, again, the 85 to 77 area, other than 45, which is open. Over time, those are all going to be again, we're talking, this is a long-range plan. The best we can do is try to preserve the corridors the best we can until those roads will eventually be built. So the developer did ask if there was a way to move the alignment, and we do this frequently. We work with developers to see if there is ways of moving alignments while still keeping the intent of the corridor, but making it better for development and also for other developments in the area. So what we did, staff looked at other options, and because of the development, for example, down here, it kind of limited going that direction. There's a pond on the property. And if you see, and again, this alignment came up in the 80s on the old thoroughfare plan and then moved to the comprehensive transportation plan. I was not involved back then of how the alignment was chosen, but a lot of times when alignment may make sense 20 years ago, 40 years ago, it may not make sense today. And we try to be realistic and work with developers to seize opportunities as we can to at least preserve a corridor. And that's all we're doing today, is preserving a corridor for a future road. So this shows, this is the property, and that is the right of way that would be dedicated as part of the rezoning. And this rezoning was approved by Charlotte City Council on May 23rd of last year. As part of the rezoning, developer is dedicating 110 feet of right of way, which is shown in blue. So it's all on their property, and it's south of Cowboy Lane. It is not on Cowboy Lane, it's all south, so it's solely on their property. And the area, as part of the development process, CDOT staff do try to work with developers. We're coming, to preserve or dedicate right away when we can as it develops. That's the only time we can really ask for those opportunities for property. And if we need to try to realign the corridor, as long as it doesn't prevent the corridor from being built in the future, we want to make sure that we try to have a corridor we can work with. We've done that for numerous corridors over the years, such as East Conferential and Bryan Farms Road down in South Charlotte. I wanted to show you this graphic. This is the whole corridor. And I just want to show you that you can see in green and yellow pieces of the corridor that we have worked with developers in the past to try to preserve a corridor. Obviously, the ones in red, there's no right of way, and those give us a little more flexibility. But as this corridor slowly turns green and yellow, it kind of limits the flexibility of moving the alignment. As I mentioned, the old thoroughfare plan showed the alignment in the first place. Sometimes routing of corridors can change as development patterns change. Something that made sense 40 years ago may not make as much sense today as patterns change. And we try to be flexible as development plans come in, seeing if there are alternatives that still meet the intent of the alignment. The portions in red, as I mentioned, are still portions that we can work with as development happens. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is preserve a corridor that would prevent large purchases of property and buildings later on when the project is eventually built, even though it may be many years in the future. So going over our public engagement, after your November meeting, we started the public engagement process the next day. That was November 17th, and we met the 30-day period, which ended in December 16th. We sent the letter, which is included in your packet, to every property owner within 200 feet from either the existing alignment or the proposed alignment, which is about 231 parcels. We also had a media release from CRTPO, which was released on November 18th and also posted on the CRTPO's website and social media accounts. We also mentioned in the letter there was opportunity to speak at tonight's meeting. So we received 4 comments, which I'll briefly go over and talk about what they were and how we resolved it or responded. The first comment was from Mr. Walter Nelson, which is the property shown in yellow or light orange. He had questions about the parcel being developed and the corridor's impact on his property. He asked if the action meant that his property was being taken. I explained to him that this was not the case, and the property would be purchased at the time that the project was funded, or if the property were to redevelop in the meantime, we would again try to work with the developer to see if we could get the right of way dedicated or reserved. We also received comments from Karen Sundley, who spoke to you tonight, in purple, Missy Parker in light blue, and David Kemp and Shannon Finn shown in yellow. As the speakers mentioned, they're along Cowboy Lane, which is a private street adjacent to the future corridor. They had overall objections to the alignment based on impacts to their properties. They also had specific design questions about the road, such as driveway access and sound walls, as well as questions about what the real timing of the roadway construction was. As I mentioned to you, if any project that has to go through state funding has to be in the approved MTP. MTP currently goes through 2050. This project is not in there. So unless things change, it is not scheduled to be done before 2050. Ms. Sundley proposed options of maybe routing through Miranda, and we looked at that. That would be right here is Miranda. There's still the issue of getting back to Beatty's Ford Road and beyond. So there's still, that wasn't really solving it. So we really did look at other options. There's just not a lot, but we thought that by moving it along the property line, it allowed for a viable corridor without impacting, or at least allowing for future development if and when it occurs. So after review of the comments received, CDOT staff are still recommending the proposed alignment as shown. The alignment preserves the viable corridor while allowing opportunities for future development should they occur. Especially in rapid growing areas, it's critical to not miss opportunities to preserve the ability to construct these thoroughfares in the future. This is the alignment that was brought to the Technical Coordinating Committee at their January meeting, which provided a recommendation to approve to the carpool board. So again, the action is as shown, and if there are any questions, please let me know and I'll try to answer them.
All right, thank you, Andy. Any questions from the floor to our presenter, Mr. Driggs?
The speaker mentioned that the road would be 15 feet from her front door. I assume we don't really build a road like that. So is the assumption that the property situation will change by the time the road is built?
Yeah, and again, I did receive a lot of questions about impacts of a road. And again, there is no funded project. So all we're trying to do is preserve a corridor. The details of the road would be established when the road was actually funded. As we do it for all construction projects, we work with neighboring property owners to try to eliminate impacts and address it at that time. And we would make sure, so I can't speak to the 15 feet. I assume that might be from the front door to the edge of Cowboy Lane, I'm thinking. But again, I can't tell you exactly where the road would be within that 110 corridor. But it is, again, off of Cowboy Lane, and it's all on the property owner who's developing that property.
So, Mr. Chairman, we are often in a situation in Charlotte where we are trying to figure out how to respond to growth, how to create the housing we need. We're trying to work out a future for the city. And in the course of doing that, whether it's through our UDO, through our transportation planning, we find ourselves in situations sometimes where things need to happen for the greater good that people nearby don't like. And it pains me. I mean, I hadn't heard those specific objections we heard tonight, but I do believe in the context of a lot of the challenges we're facing and given the long time horizon until any of this actually happens, that we should approve this.
Okay, thank you for that. Could you flip back a couple of slides so we get the alignment again? Okay, so that's good. See a hand to my left over here. Lee?
Thank you. I really appreciate the residents who came to speak. I'm very moved by both of you, especially the woman who spoke of her husband and the commitment she made to him. Is your answer the same with respect to the sound walls that were requested, that no one can say because it's too far in the future, because that would seem like an important accommodation also?
And those are all impacts that we look at as part of project development when it occurs. So let's hypothetically say it is a state project in 2055. They would have to look at all those types of provisions, and the sound walls were oriented, and landscaping or berms or whatever. So those would all be detailed when the project was actually funded. Yes.
Craig?
Two questions. First, could you point out the properties that were referenced? Could you point out on the map the properties that were referenced? I saw that's the one where she said it's going to be 15 feet from her.
That would be the light blue.
Okay. Yeah, I was, okay.
And then Ms. Sundley is.
All right, second question is the process of actually building the road, getting the, this is the alignment. So then what happens next and what's the time period? So I just want a clear understanding of that.
As you either know or will know soon, that road building is a long update process. So the first step would be for it to have to get into a version of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. This board just approved the latest version, the 2050. And again, it was not in there. So in 4 years or so, a new version, which would be 2055, will be adopted by this board. As part of the development, CRTPO asked all the jurisdictions to submit potential projects for prioritization and ranking and seeing if it get included. But as an MTPs have to be what's called fiscally constrained. So it's not just a wish list. So if we submit 200 projects, we don't just show 200 projects. We can only show projects that we reasonably can expect to fund with the reasonable expected revenue during that period. So that would be just the first step. It has to be an MTP. Once it's in there, and that pretty much guides, the next step would be to get it into the Transportation Improvement Program. But we would not go into the back of the MTP and submit a project, we have to go kind of in the order. So there would be all these projects that are shown in early years that would be slowly submitted for funding in a transportation improvement program. That's a document from the state, which pretty much shows, here's what we reasonably expect to fund over the next 10 years. So let's just say, I'm going to give an example. It's not how we submit it for the 2055 plan. Let's say it gets in there, it would be in the latter part of that plan. So it would be like between 2050 and 2055, if that's the way it went. Then we'd have to wait until all the projects in front of it were slowly put into the transportation improvement program, funded, and completed. So it would not probably be submitted for a transportation improvement program probably until about 2045, 2050. Those are just kind of estimates, but it can't skip to the front of the line.
Right.
It has to kind of go into order of what our approved plan is.
So just in some brief summary for me, we're talking 25 to 35 years out.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Rusty.
All right, so Andy, you said earlier that this new alignment was based on property lines. But I would like for you to pull up the blue parcel, which is the Rock and K Ranch, with that site plan of the development. So to me, it looks like the driver of this alignment is to give the developer highest and best use of the property, not to consider where the existing property lines were. Now, I might be speaking out of school there, but I see where your alignment is
right
now, and it would bisect this property. So the developer would have a challenge, and he may have to create an open space on the north side of that existing corridor versus gaining full benefit the way it is with the new realignment. So is the driver the developer, or is it property lines?
I would say, I would think that originally it was with the development, that if there's any potential, and there are developments along the way, like where I showed you, like where the green and yellows are, that there's just now flexibility. It has to go right next to it to connect. So we look, are there opportunities to move it while still be able to connect it to the portions that are dedicated and get back to where they need to be? So that's what drove it. While we determined along the property lines is therefore the impact would be only along the property line and not splitting. If you look at the alignment, let's go. This yellow line cuts through numerous properties along the way and probably going to pretty much limit development potential for a good chunk of those. So we thought by hugging the property line more so, the impact is just along that while still preserving opportunities as this area develops, so that we're not going to be dealing with this alignment 30 times along this segment. By putting where we think is less impactful, it's just like the one property that is kind of taking the brunt. A lot of times we also look at hugging property lines if possible, so each side is kind of taking half of the impact. That was not the case on this side because the property on the other side of Beatty's Ford is already developed, so we had to move it totally south of that property line. But instead of just splitting parcels throughout this process, we thought, let's try to see if there's a way that we can kind of put the impacts along a property line so it leaves as much open space down the line.
You good on that? James?
You did say this was recently approved by Charlotte City Council.
James, the mic.
You did say this was recently approved by Charlotte City Council.
That's correct.
Do you have the information from the developer that we could review?
I don't have them with me. I could send it out, but it discussed the right of way at that point. So the developer showed that the alignment would have to be as part of it, and it is listed as part of the conditions that the developer would dedicate the right of way, and that they would have to work with CDOT staff to take it through this process to get it changed.
And I know it's not the job of this board to determine quality of development and impact. I was just curious as the price point and quality of the homes and that sort of thing, overall impact to the community.
I think I have the number of parcels, but again, the rezoning was rezoning to multifamily. It does not get into the specifics. That's part of the next step, is part of the subdivision ordinance. So I believe it's 200 units. Do you have that?
Mr. Chair, I have a printout of the final staff analysis. I can either give it to you or just respond to that question, but the petition in question pertained to 21 acres where the proposal was to put up to 123 townhomes at a density of 5.8 units per acre.
Was there more?
I don't know what else you want to know. I mean, there's a discussion here about why the city approved it and a traffic count. When these things are done, they go to a bunch of city departments and we get kind of feedback from all of them. And the staff at that time did recommend approval. There are a number of reasons listed why they did. It says the petition proposes a slight increase in the recommended density, creates additional housing opportunities and housing diversity along the Beatties Ford corridor. And this is a sensitive environment. Beatties Ford is kind of one of our corridors of opportunity. It's identified as one of the kind of hard hit areas of Charlotte. So the opportunity to see investment there and creation of new housing there was something that was attractive to council when we passed it. Commits to building street and sidewalk connections to the adjacent parcels to increase street connectivity and pedestrian experience for future developments. Proposes a 12-foot multi-use path along Beatties Ford Road, contributing to improving pedestrian connectivity along the corridor. Proposes fundamental amenities for future residents, including a shared use path and bike racks, and commits a 50-foot Class C buffer where the site abuts existing residential areas to the southwest, ensuring an appropriate transition between the sites. So those were the points of the staff's basis for the recommendation. There was also a zoning committee recommendation for approval of the petition, recognizing the petition is not identical with what we're talking about here, the alignment. But the petition did depend on the alignment, or at least on the ability to assume that at some date, decades in the future, there wouldn't suddenly be a road constructed right through the site.
Can you again go back to that alignment, the map? So looking at it two-dimensionally is what we are now, to have no idea what the topo may or may not be like out there. And we're looking at the proposed, which picks it up in the lower left, the dotted blue lines. The existing alignment, can you describe the existing alignment? Is that a fully approved and already dedicated existing alignment?
No, none of it's dedicated. So it was, again, it came out of a planning study back in the mid 80s. I've actually tried looking for that study and in our move to eliminate paper, I can't find it. So I'm not sure, I can't really speak to exactly why that line was shown. Like I said, if we were to start it from scratch, we tried to put the impacts like along property lines and so forth, just again, so you're not just ripping through middle of properties. It just, we feel that makes more sense than just going through. So I can't justify why the yellow line was shown on here. We have an opportunity, the developer who will dedicate this right away, and we're just trying to save that opportunity so that down the line, the property is there rather than having to purchase and tear down and remediate.
Okay, I have two questions. I'm going to go with Renee first here. Renee?
I'm going to follow up a little bit on what Rusty was saying, and that, I'm sure that in part, the developer dedicating the right of way to this project is enticing to this particular alignment. But I also know what it feels like to have a plan for a highway in your front yard. And even if it's 30 years away or 25 years away, you sit there and look out your front door and think about the vultures that are circling and your quality of life diminishing, far off on the horizon. And that's not a pleasant way to live, and it lowers your quality of life. So my question is if there is something, a middle ground that could be reached where the alignment would get closer to the Brewer property and between the Kid and Pool property and not completely bend to the desires of a developer, putting the families that live there at a reduced quality of life.
We'd have to probably look at it, but I'm trying to think how that would work, because then you would even have more of a, just like a kind of a strip of land that's kind of no man's land. But I guess maybe if you could give me a little more guidance on exactly what you're talking about. You said down.
But it would still leave a sliver of this future development that would not be, developable for this particular project, certainly. But it would also not put the will of a developer ahead of the people who already live in this quarter or in this area. So it would be I don't see the property owner's name, but it would be the southern boundary of the Brewer property that meets up where the Kid property and the Pool property meet. The southern boundary of the Kid property, the northern boundary of the Pool property. So to sort of lift up the existing alignment or lower the northeastern side.
Mayor Becker.
Actually, I think that Councilman Gardner and Mayor Notwell basically said what I said, and that specific route was something that caught my eye as well. Also based on what Mayor Knox said, that splitting the difference seems to, first of all, move it away from the existing older residents, the Cowboy Lane residents, the ones who've spoken. It also moves it away from an existing subdivision that's newer and doesn't put it right up against another existing subdivision that's newer. It splits the difference. It may require, I think Mayor Knox pointed it out, that the blue developer might not get housing yield on the sliver that's left. That might have to be open space. There might have to be a pedestrian underpass or culvert under the new road to get to open space. There could be linear park that could serve all of the people along the corridor. So it looks like there is an alignment that could accomplish the things that I know Mayor Knox brought up and Councilwoman Garner elaborated on. So those were my thoughts as well.
Question back to you, Andy, is from the yellow, the existing alignment, and you're talking about running it along property lines. How much meander capability? I mean, I'm all about preserving future right of way. We're going to need it someday, somehow it goes, because it seems like there's some point of connection on that lower left. That's a very narrow rectangular piece that comes through somewhere. Is that a dedicated street right of way right now?
I'm sorry, on
Lower left of the corner, keep going left, left, left. No, keep going yellow line to the very end of the yellow line right there.
Yes.
What is that?
That is a dedicated parcel.
So the pickup point is there.
Yes.
Has to be there.
Correct.
And on the, we'll call it the north end. Can you
Right
pop
here.
that down? Does that come down a little bit more?
Uh,
So those are 2 points that we have to connect somehow, and we're looking for that. How much capability do we have to meander? Now, again, you're playing in parcel land, if you will, on that. I would be sensitive as well to the homeowners that are existing there versus a new project. And I'm a developer, so I finally, certainly understand that. But could there be some meander that would create some more distance between the 2 properties on the lower end there? And even if they wanted to bring them back up to the red line and then meander back to, I'll call it the south. So where Pool's property is there. I know it seems like we're hugging along that northern development there. That's a property line that we've seen to describe. Could that line meander to give at least a decent yield on the developer property? It may or may not be reduced, but it's going to affect Pools property, I can't remember, Kid property there, and Nelson. And so could we get it along the, we'll call it this, somewhere along the south edge of the Pool property, and then at Point of Connect where the blue line is there, and follow those lines? Is that something that was discussed? And maybe Ed, can you address that a little bit and help out as well? So again, I'm looking at a map two-dimensionally, so if there's a hole in there that we can't cross, then that's a whole nother problem.
When this came up in front of council, we made a land use decision. And so there wasn't that much discussion about the alignment issue. It was really just a question of whether this particular development kind of suited our purposes of creating more housing, bringing the cost of housing down, and also improving connectivity in that Beatty's Ford Railroad area. So I don't remember details of a discussion about alternative alignments.
Okay, and this is not an approved subdivision yet because of this issue, right? Is that correct? Okay. No. Rob, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of things. Rusty and Renee kind of stole a lot of my key points. So stop cheating off my papers, please.
You guys are passing notes, I know.
But just as a point of reference, with the development and saying they'd have to split it. The Vance Road extension in Huntersville that attaches or, was slated to attach to Gilead, which just got completed this year. Developer came in many years before I was on the board and said, we want to put in a nice neighborhood here, but there's this road that's going right through it. And well, they had to build around it. Unfortunately, I think this is what the developer is going to have to deal with here, or in my opinion, is they're going to have to build around it. There's a road there. In the 80s, for some reason, we drew a line. We've lost the paperwork on it. I'm looking at Google Maps, trying to figure out how you're going to connect it over here to Reams to get to North Lake Mall. And when I pulled a lot of these parcels up on Polaris, the land is owned by the HOA, so it's not dedicated as we go north towards North Lake Mall. So it's, and as you said, it's 50 years out, 40 years out, whatever it is. Yeah, I think we are making or this is asking for us to make a very big move in terms of for the developer and not the corridor. Had the developer not come to the city council or CDOT, would you have even looked at this?
No.
Thank you.
But like I said, though, we basically treat any developments as we come in. So.
Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I look at this, and we look at, just so you know, all towns are dealing with this. We're one of the busiest states that people are moving to. But we as a town, in our town, we try to follow the idea of do no harm. And when you look at the roads, I'm just looking, it's hard to tell with the scale that you have at 400. The notices go out to people within 200 feet, I think you said.
Right.
So when you look at this, is there any thought that's been put into where, because if you're moving it up to where the proposed is, it appears you're affecting more property owners than where the yellow line is drawn there. So has there been thought put into different avenues which affects less homes, I guess is my question, which is maybe what Rusty and Renee were.
But if you, we did look at that, and right now, for example, let's just say east of Beatty's Ford, you're going through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This way, this is just 1, 2, and this is the same owner. So.
All right, Mr. Pepsi. Any other comments? Brad?
Sure. Thank you, Andy. I haven't heard anybody dispute the need for the road. That was a question asked by a speaker. Why do we need the road? I'm convinced that we need connectivity between the two interstates. I don't think that's up for debate. It's good public policy, right, to have right-of-way dedicated as development happens. So I think what we're asking is the developer to cede more right-of-way to the to the city, that would lessen, that's really what we're talking about, meandering, moving away. That's simply saying, ask the developer for more right of way. My question is, Andy, what's the right of way dedicated 110 feet, I think you said earlier? What's the cross section anticipated in the boulevard? Is it divided 2 lanes? And what's the width of that with sidewalks and bike paths and all that? Do you know that?
I don't know, but I think the 110 is to look at, yes, a 2-lane with median, planting strip, sidewalks and so forth.
Yeah, I know a little bit about how Charlotte builds roads, right? So I don't, again, I'm sympathetic. I also know that we've had this issue generationally in our community. And it is part of growth. I would just wonder the distance from the property line and what the treatment of the boulevard is. Is it a curb, gutter, traffic, or is it tree, sidewalk, bike path and such? My guess is it's a 2-lane divided boulevard with some treatments that are amenities and sidewalks, and at least how Charlotte builds roads. So I wanted to put that context out there. We're not disputing the need for the road, right? We're asking for a meander, which is essentially just asking for more right of way. And I don't disagree with that. I just think at the end of the day, we need this road, and this is good public policy to get it while it's being developed. It saves money in the end. My 2 cents.
I would agree. Ed, you want to speak?
Yes, Mr. Chair, from what has been said around the table, it feels to me like there's at best a kind of a mixture of points of view here. I wouldn't want this to pass based on a vote from Charlotte and 1 or 2 other people. So can I suggest that we defer it? And that would give me some time to work with the planning staff and the petitioner and consider some of the things that have been said here tonight, and then decide what we might bring forward. Because again, I've heard you all and I heard the speakers, and I need to do some more work myself, frankly.
Fair enough on that. I think that's probably a good choice to go down that road and explore a little bit. There is a lot of concern on a straight line alignment. Again, I don't know the topo of the area, so maybe something could be worked out where we meander. I think to Brad's point, we'd like to understand the street section as well on what that's going to look like in that corridor now or in the future. So I think it's a good thing. So I'm going to leave it up to you then. You can make a motion if you want.
I
on your
move
own
that we defer the
recommendation.
decision on this item until our next meeting.
All right. Any other conversation?
You'll need a second, I think.
Second over there. Did I hear that? Very good. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All the way around. Opposed? Great. Thanks for that input.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that. And
Thanks, Ed.
thank the speakers as well to come over and share their viewpoint with us. All right. Thank you. That is probably one of the most cooperative discussions I've had in a long time on road alignment. So I appreciate that. All right. All right, we'll drop down to item number 8. Bjorn, I think you're up on this one. This is the federal functional classification revision request. I know there's one in my area and one to the north. So welcome, Bjorn.
Evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I guess I'm the first up. I'm planner for Union County. I'm representing the county as well as Waxhaw and Wesley Chapel for a functional classification request. You just talked about CTPs quite a bit. Now we're going to talk about the federal aid system to request a portion of our roadway network in Western Union County to be added. Oh, I guess Heather is first.
We fooled you.
Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Heather Maloney. I'm the transportation planner for the town of Huntersville. And I will be presenting on a request to have a section of Stumptown Road in northeast Huntersville. So we're requesting that we reclassify Stumptown Road as it's currently classified as a local road to be a minor collector between US 21 and NC 115 highways. So there's the section of the road highlighted in this red circle for context. And then here's some details. The section that we're asking to be reclassified is highlighted there in green. As I said, it's currently classified as a local road, but already functions as a collector, as a major east-west connector between Statesville Road, which is US 21, and Old Statesville Road 115 to the east. The current traffic count there is just under 8,000 or was that in 2016. And it's already projected to be at around 14,000 in 2045. And that's before even considering an extension that we have already started here to the east and will continue on this dashed portion, which will extend Stumptown Road down here to Rama Church Road, which is already classified as a major collector. So this is a funded project through the town's CIP in the coming years. And as part of that project, we will get a new railroad crossing right here marked in yellow across the Norfolk Southern line there. And with that new crossing, we will close 6 other previous crossings. So several private driveways marked in red. Rama Church Road's crossing will close as well. And there's an additional closing to the south here, not shown on the map. So with this future extension, we're going to see even more traffic along Stumptown Road. Statesville Road to the west here is also being widened in the next 2 or 3 years. So for that, all those reasons, we're asking that Stumptown Road be reclassified from local to a minor collector. So with that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions? On the horns, a similar problem that we'll talk about next as well. So if there's none around, I'll let you off the hook.
Thank you.
So now Bjorn, you can get up there.
Thank you. So similar request here in Union County. Our motivation was actually stimulated by a town of Waxhaw councilwoman recognizing the issues in Western Union County along Cuthbertson Road and recognizing that there were multiple players involved and convened a forum on it. And what we recognized was that this section of road is not on the federal aid system. So it was really hamstringing our opportunities to make improvements, particularly through CRTPO and the funding programs that are available here. So this is part of a larger corridor all the way from Newtown Road to US 521 in South Carolina, and would complete that. That's state maintained. So this is the section that we're talking about here in blue, connects Newtown Road to NC 16 by a large commercial node. And then the portion to the west, it turns into Kensington Drive and then into Jim Wilson when it goes to South Carolina and Sun City. So the existing North Carolina federal aid system, the section to the west of Providence Road is actually owned by the town of Waxhaw. So that's why it's not on the federal aid system, but Cuthbertson Road is North Carolina DOT maintained, and that's why we're requesting it. And then the section in South Carolina doesn't show up on our map, but that goes all the way to 521. So this map that shows the destinations that are along the corridor, we have a middle school and high school, as well as a library, shopping center, a church, and we have received resolutions from Waxhaw and Wesley Chapel, as well as Union County Board of Commissioners. So this helps complete a network that we think will make sense from a connectivity perspective. So we presented to the TCC in January, as did Heather, and now we're presenting to the board for information. If we haven't received any feedback or questions that will cause this to change, they'll come back to you in February, and hopefully action will be taken at that meeting, and that'll direct CRTPO staff to submit it to the NCDOT. Will ultimately make the determination on whether to add these to the network. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have as well.
Great. Any questions for our presenter from the board around? Craig, you've been kind of outside on that one a little bit, but yeah, it's I think both of these, again, they're for information for us as well. I'll speak to a little bit of the one down in my area, just like the one up in Huntersville. We would all be looking for more opportunity for some type of other than us funding on some of those roadway improvements. And so this is the reason for these requests to reclassify. We did learn a little bit about the process, and it was one of my commissioners that brought forward, had a great forum, organized the county and Wesley Chapel and ourselves and DOT. And so this is, again, the reason for these types of requests for both of these projects. So again, this is informational. And if there's any other questions, please contact staff or directly. Craig, you've got a question there.
Well, I just want to know what the process, what happens next. And you say it's informational, but so there's no action required tonight. Is there action anticipated by this board?
That's correct. No action. This is informational tonight. And next month would be the request for action on the item.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
this is going to be a dumb question. I've asked a lot of them, but the vernacular is confusing me. I looked through the packet just to understand what federal aid. I think of federal aid, I think of disaster stuff. This is not, this is just making these roads eligible for federal funding streams like the Highway Transportation Fund and all. It's got nothing to do with damage,
That'd be correct.
storms, that kind of, okay. Thank
Right.
you. That's
No
my dumb
problem.
question for the night.
All right, any other questions, comments around the board? Okay, thank you very much for that. Thank you, Bjorn and Heather. Thank you for your presentations tonight. All right, so we're going to drop down to item number 9, the discretionary funds project call. Andrew, your turn at the podium.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, board. Andrew Ventresca, I'm a planner with the town of Troutman. I also chair the project oversight committee. Tonight, we're going to discuss the discretionary funds program, what the project oversight committee is recommending for the 2022 fall call for projects. Tonight's presentation is informational only. We'll be back in front of this board in February to ask for an action on the item. I do want to say that it's important to note that what the POC presents to you tonight as recommendations is a recommendation, and this body will be the ultimate decision maker on how to allocate these funds. So what you're seeing tonight is just a recommendation from the Project Oversight Committee. This should be a review for you. This was presented to the board back in November. This is the amount of funding available by type. As you can see, we have $59.1 million available to allocate between 2023 and 2026. If any of you, particularly anybody that's new, has any questions about what these funding streams mean or would like any more information on these funding streams, feel free to reach out to myself or anybody on CRTPO staff, and we'll be able to get you set up and a little bit more information. This is a summary of the applications we have received. We did receive 34 applications. 5 of those are planning studies. 3 are specific to the carbon reduction program, which is a new stream of funding that we fell into this year. 9 are new highway projects. 14 are bike ped projects. 2 were shortfall highway projects, and we had 1 shortfall bike ped project. As you can see, the requested amount was 79.7 million. Again, we only had 59.1 to allocate, so we did have to cut $20.6 million. What you see in front of you is the recommendation of the highway projects moving forward. How these scored and the whole list was included in your agenda packet. So feel free to reference that if you have any more specifics you want on these projects. We did recommend 2 shortfall projects, as we call them, basically projects underway that have run into some financial hardship. One of those is in Charlotte, as you can see, and the other one is in the town of Davidson. And then the rest of the projects you see listed are new projects that are split between Charlotte, Davidson, Waxhaw, Mooresville, Union County, and Huntersville. These totaled $36 million. These are the recommended non-highway projects. The first 3 you see are EV charging projects. These are the ones we're considering using the carbon reduction funds on. I'll talk a little bit more about those on a slide in the future. But we're recommending 3 of those projects. You can see the amount of funding on the right-hand column, 1 in Matthews, 1 in Charlotte, and 1 in Indian Trail. And the rest of the projects you see are, excuse me, I said that wrong. 1 in Charlotte, 1 in Indian Trail, and 1 in Monroe. The rest of the projects you see are all bicycle and pedestrian projects. And the very top project, it's a $300,000 request from the town of Matthews. They ran into a shortfall on the 4-mile Greenway underpass. The last recommended set of projects that we're looking at here are planning projects. The policy document allows us to allocate $500,000 or 1% of total funding to planning projects. As you can see here, we have 4 of them. It equals $533,000, excuse me, roughly. And so the Project Oversight Committee is recommending we fund all of these 4 projects moving forward. This slide just breaks down the projects by type and the percentage of the ratio of the funding that was available. With the existing and the new highway projects, we've got 62% of total funding allocated to those. Non-highway projects, we've split these into the bike ped projects and the carbon reduction projects. As you can see, we've got 21% of the total funding to bicycle pedestrian projects and 16% of the total funding to the EV station carbon reduction projects. And then we do have the 1% to the planning projects, which I mentioned that our policy document allows. I did want to touch base briefly on the carbon reduction projects. These funds were made available to CRTPO in late July of this year. The policy document guide does not address these funds at all since they're so new. And the Project Oversight Committee has not had a chance to develop any criteria of how to use these funds or rank projects with these funds. So the Project Oversight Committee did decide to use these funds to allocate on the electric vehicle funding. The purpose of these funds is to eliminate carbon, and we feel that it meets the purpose of those funds. Again, these are just recommendations from the Project Oversight Committee. Next month, this board will be asked how they want to allocate this money. And February 2nd, the TCC will decide how they want to make a recommendation to this board. And again, at February 15th, this body in front of me tonight will make a final decision on how to allocate these funds. And with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
All right, any questions? I know there's some comments about the POC and the process, so I know if you'd like to take that up a little bit. Lisa?
Sherry, thank you. Neil, can you help us to understand if we have recommendations of any changes, how that would work?
Sure. So as Andrew mentioned, the Project Oversight Committee is a subcommittee of the TCC, and they meet twice a month. Their meeting happens to be tomorrow afternoon. So the most important thing they're going to deal with on their agenda is a review of any of the comments received earlier this month at the TCC meeting regarding the project list, and then any comments received tonight and any adjustments that need to be made before the draft final list appears in the TCC agenda packet for the February 2nd meeting, and then subsequently in your February 15th board meeting agenda packet. So, again, any of the comments here tonight that may impact the final recommended project list, those will be discussed tomorrow. I will say, and I think Andrew said this, but I'll just reiterate it. We do use a data-driven process for the most part to derive the recommended project list at the POC. The challenge this time is we found out about the carbon reduction program funds that were awarded to us through the IIJA legislation late in July. The call for projects always opens in August. So the Project Oversight Committee did not have a whole lot of time this time around to develop a criteria to scan for, or to prioritize those CRP funds. But we have some really good ideas, some really good emissions calculations we'd like to implore next time. We just didn't have the time to do it this time. So I know I've rambled probably too much information, but wanted to give you all the complete picture.
Thanks for that.
Rusty?
Mr. Chair, yeah. So for those of you that were on this board last year, we had a project that scored evenly with the project in Mooresville. We lost that project. We had a 20% match. Mooresville had a 25% match. This project, the Beatty Street shared use path, runs from Highway 115, which is Main Street in Davidson, to Griffith Street, which is our main influx corridor from Interstate 77. Not only is this corridor heavily traveled because Train Industries has 400 employees that use this daily. Community School of Davidson is based on Beatty Street as well, so you've got that influx. But some of our most financially challenged residents live in this corridor, and they need this side path to go back and forth from their jobs at Davidson College to their jobs at our retail stores and restaurants. And this was never a want, this was a need in this project. We had a 20% match last year when we brought this before the POC. We have upped that to 40%. So we are fully vested in trying to get this side path done for our residents. And I would just urge, being put in the notes, that when the POC revisits this, if there are indeed any reallocations or amendments to the funding, that we get a nod that way to help us do this project, because this is definitely a need in our town. It's not a want.
Thank you. Andrew, and I'll defer to Neil as well. How do we get Rusty's group to the table on this to talk about it, since we've got a short fuse of tomorrow?
And I don't have the list in front of me, but I do recall it just missed the cut this time. It was a very competitive project. We just had a lot of bicycle and pedestrian project submittals during the fall call. So if there is some funding that becomes available, or one of the recommended project submittals could somehow assess their proposal and free up some funding, then I think it would go to the next highest scoring projects. But again, I don't have the list in front of me.
That's right. The Davidson project that Mayor Knox had mentioned is the very next bicycle pedestrian project on the list. It's about 10 points from the project in front of it. So it is a competitive project. As he mentioned last year, it was tied, which obviously it was a competitive project last year as well. So we'll take these comments as mentioned at the POC meeting. And we also have 2 POC meetings before the February 15th meeting. So tomorrow's not the deadline. So we've got 2 scheduled POC meetings. So if anything, if we can't get something accomplished tomorrow, or something changes, maybe next week, we still have that second meeting to discuss what we can do before we come back in February.
All right, Lisa, please.
Thanks. Just one last question. Andrew, I think that project was kind of classified under the bicycle and pedestrian. Could it also be considered under a different bucket, like the carbon reduction or?
Carbon reduction funds can be used on bicycle pedestrian projects, and we kind of lumped them together as highway versus non-highway. So if money was freed up from that pot, it would definitely be something the POC would look at.
Yeah, I would strongly encourage a second look at that. And, if there's other projects that were maybe awarded something higher that can make some adjustments to fund this project. Like I said, I mean, it is a very narrow, dangerous area for people that walk every day. It's highly traveled, and it is very dangerous. It's very much a needed project. I would vote for it before I would a charging station.
Sure.
So.
Go ahead. Anything more to add to it? If you could then connect you guys and connect the dots, so you can have the conversation, we could learn what the next steps are. And if there is some, we'll call it wiggle room in the available funds, then we'd appreciate at least having the dialogue with Mayor Knox.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Rob, didn't see you over there.
It's okay, I blend in. I would concur with the vice chair in looking at other buckets. When a town, municipality, we all know it, when we're willing to put up 40%, even 20% of a project, but when you're going up to 25, 35, 40, 45%, you've been passed over once or twice before, and you keep adding money to it and get passed over, it's tough. So I would definitely encourage the committee to see if there's a way to motivate others to get that project up.
Sure. And again, we will take all the comments we get tonight to the POC. And fortunately for the board members here, you do have the ultimate say on how this money is allocated. So if you don't agree with the POC recommendation coming back next month, you do have the authority to kind of go off and do what you want with it. So
What was the ask after the 40D9?
Okay. All right, thanks, Rusty. All right, any other, did I miss any to my side here? All right, Andrew, thank you. But again, I'd encourage, open up that dialogue.
Sure.
Our parties here, and
Look
make
forward to
sure
it.
we
Thank
all
you.
understand that they might have a good fair shot at this. So thank you. Appreciate that. All right, we'll move over to Mr. Cook, CRTPO 2024, the Unified Planning Work Program,
Good evening.
AKA budget.
The budget, yes.
I like all these new names.
So Unified Planning Work Program is just a fancy word for our annual budget. Also does provide a lot more information than just numbers, but that's essentially what it is. So what I wanted to talk about tonight is to very briefly explain what the UPWP is, provide a funding overview, talk about proposals that we've received for funding through the Section 5303 program from the Federal Transit Administration, talk about allocations, and then finish up with next steps. So as we mentioned before, this is our budget. It shows all the planning activities that we anticipate for the fiscal year. It tells everyone how federal and state funds are allocated to projects. It is divided into 8 categories, which we call task codes. And then one last reminder that I think is always important is that most of the work that any MPO does is required by law, mostly federal law or regulation, but also in some cases state law. And so you'll see a relatively consistent work program from year to year, and that's probably not going to be any different for fiscal year 24. So in terms of our funding sources, we have 3 basic funding sources. One is what we call PL funds or planning funds that come from the Federal Highway Administration. Then we also get SDBGDA funds, which I think Andrew was mentioning just a little bit ago, that help supplement the PL funds. And then lastly, the Section 5303 funds that I mentioned previously from the Federal Transit Administration. So those are the 3 basic funding sources that we use to support our activities. And all these funds support our operating expenses. These aren't capital dollars. None of these funds go to projects like that. These are all for operating expenses. And then, like most federal funds, there's a local match. And the PL and the DA funds, those dollars are matched by member jurisdictions. It's spread out on a per capita basis amongst all the member jurisdictions. But the Section 5303 funds, they are matched by the user. So if ICATS, the Iredell County Area Transportation System, uses funds, 5303 funds, then Iredell County is responsible for that local match. It is not spread around all the member jurisdictions. So this is a summary of the funding that we expect for the next fiscal year. You can see those funding sources on the side, the PL funds, the DA funds, and the Section 5303 funds. And then the federal amount that we're getting is 1.5, almost 1.6 million for the PL funds. The 1.1 million for the DA money, that is, we've been taking down that amount for about 3 years now. From that larger pot of DA funds that Andrew was talking about a moment ago. And then Section 5303, there is some volatility there, if you will. Last year, we got double that, but that was an unusual occurrence. There was some state 5303 money that was in danger of being lost or rescinded by the federal government. And so the state distributed it to all the MPOs. Now we're kind of getting back to normal, that just slightly over $1 million figure for the Section 5303 funds. And then you can see the local match, how that would be distributed across those sources. And one other thing to note about the match of 5303 funds, it's handled a little bit differently than the other sources. The other 2 are a traditional 20% match. In this case, the match is split between the user and NCDOT. So it's so NCDOT covers half, and then the user covers half, but that is not the case for the PL funds or the DA funds. So in terms of the 5303 proposals, again, we received just over $1 million, or we will be receiving just over $1 million in the next fiscal year. And we got a number of proposals in, and all do appear to be for eligible activities. And you can see the agencies there that did request funds or will be using funds. CATS, CRTPO, we use some of those funds to support our transit planning activities. Iredell County Area Transportation System, and I'll jump down to the Union County Transportation System. And then the last one I'll mention is the Metroliner Regional Model. This is a tool that is very important to the organization. It's really fundamental to what we do in terms of data analysis, and they use and they've requested the use of $180,000 in federal funds this year. They also do request PL funds as well. And I might also add that a model is required of any MPO. So this is supporting an activity that actually just has to take place. It's not voluntary. There was a new requirement coming out of the IIJA, or the bipartisan infrastructure law, that was passed about a year or so ago, I think it was now. This requires that funds are set aside for what is called increasing safe and accessible transportation options. And it requires all MPOs throughout the country to use at least 2.5% of their PL funds on planning activities that support that to increase safe and accessible options for multiple travel modes for people of all ages and abilities. And that's a quote from the legislation. And the amount that we would be obligated to spend in that category would be $84,700, but that is a minimum. And I think most likely we will be spending a lot more than that. We're really putting this under kind of a complete streets category, if you will. And so in the current year's UPWP, what we chose to do to meet this obligation is what you see in that final bullet, and that is text directly from the current year's work program about looking at high-ranking active transportation corridors and then comparing that against NCDOT's complete streets evaluation methodology. And at this point, we'll probably be continuing that into FY24. Andrew just went over these as well. We have to program those planning studies that he mentioned into the work program because we are a transportation planning organization. These are planning projects. And you can see the 5 proposals there: Central Line Regional Council, Indian Trail, Matthews, Mooresville, and Stallings. And at this point, we are going to be assuming in the development of UPWP that these will be approved by the board, and we'll include them in the UPWP as it goes through the process of getting adopted. There will also be projects that have to be carried over, previous studies that we funded as an organization that weren't able to complete their work in a given fiscal year. We don't know what those amounts are yet. We hope to know that rather soon, but you can see the 6 projects there: Statesville, the SEAM project, which covers multiple cities and towns from Charlotte up to Statesville, Mint Hill, Troutman, Mooresville, and Huntersville. We'll be working with those communities to determine how much money they will need to complete the project and hopefully complete it by or during FY24. And one other thing to note about these projects and the previous ones, the local match for those projects, it's covered by the communities that are supporting those projects. So you see the I-77 James Sowers interchange study. Statesville is on the hook for the local match for that project and so on down the line. So that is not distributed across all the agencies or all the member jurisdictions. So wanted to get into a little bit into allocations, and we are not at a stage where we can give you dollars at this stage. We only recently received information about the first 2 quarters of FY23, and we use that as a guide for how we think we should be allocating money for the next fiscal year. And we only received that data, I think, on Friday, if I'm not mistaken. So there hasn't been a lot of time to plug numbers in, but you see under the possible allocation column there, percentages. And we think we're probably on the mark here in terms of what the final allocations will look like with dollar figures. But these are the task codes on the left that I mentioned. There are 8 of them. And so data and planning support the travel demand model that I referenced earlier, and also a land use model, traffic counts, a lot of data in this particular category. And so we're thinking about 21% of our funds will probably be needed for that category. The next one is planning process, which is kind of a catch-all in many respects, in that it takes in our comprehensive transportation plan, the metropolitan transportation plan, our Beyond 77 initiative, and so many other things that will need about 30% of the total allocation for that category. UPWP does not take up a lot of our funding resources, so you see 9% there. For the TIP, we'll have to look at that perhaps a little bit more closely to see if that's accurate or if it needs to be increased in some way as we continue through the development of the UPWP. Special studies, that's to be determined because we don't know what those carryovers are going to be at this stage. Getting into the remaining task codes, we have the regulatory requirements associated with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act and environmental justice. A lot of that is regulatory in nature, so it's not a lot of money. And a number of the activities associated with those two issues are embedded in other efforts as a part of the organization. It might be the TIP, it might be the plan development, those sorts of things. So it looks like a low number or a low percentage, but other activities take place in other task codes. Public participation, we think 3% is probably going to be reasonable next fiscal year. For our statewide and extra regional planning efforts, that's where we work with our neighboring MPOs and other transportation planning organizations. We are engaged at a state and national level, so it's about 2%. And then finally, management and operations. Those are the things that keep us running on a day-to-day basis and vital really to any organization. This year will be a little bit different in that we'll be reassessing the memorandum of understanding, and that falls into that category. So that's a little bit different from most years. We only do that on a decade by decade, on once a decade basis. So that number may be a little bit higher than it has been in the past, but there's an unusual set of circumstances associated with this coming fiscal year. So we have some remaining issues. We do have to assess those first quarter and second quarter expenditures. We do want to finalize the allocations for the Section 5303 program. We think we're pretty much done with that for the most part. We do have to determine the amount to be programmed for a transit-oriented development grant that CATS received. This is extra money on top of everything else. We don't really touch it, but it does have to be in our work program. We just have to figure out how much we need to program next fiscal year. We do have to have some discussions about traffic counts and how our funds can be used, perhaps for any recurring counts that might support the Metrolina Regional Travel Demand Model or NCDOT, and that matter of the complete streets issue that I mentioned earlier and the 2.5 set aside requirement. In terms of next steps, we've already presented this first draft to the TCC earlier this month, and we're here tonight, of course. We'll hold a transportation staff meeting that will probably end up being in February. And in February, we will return to you with second draft of the work program, and we will hold another transportation staff meeting to review the development of the work program. And then in March, we'll come back for and ask for adoption of the work program for next fiscal year. Those are the issues I wanted to share tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
You've got a lot of work to do between now and March. So we're going to let you do that work for one, but any questions around the board? Joe?
Real quick, thank you, Chairman. This is probably more for me than anyone else. Maybe all of you know this, but that 2.5%, that was about $84,000 for safety. Can you give me some examples of what that specifically would be used for? During safe and accessible.
In the current work program, what we've done is we've identified the task there in that final bullet about where we would look at some active transportation corridors, and they came out of the process to develop the 2050 NTP that we adopted March of last year. So getting close to a year ago. So to look at those corridors and then evaluate them against NCDOT's complete streets evaluation methodology to see if there are any gaps there, to see what we might have to do with any policy changes to effectively bring about a complete streets concept on some of those corridors.
So would that include like future roundabouts that are not there right now, if it was a safety thing, or it would be something completely?
I'm not sure if it would get into that level of detail where we might be making any sort of design decisions or recommendations for a corridor, but certainly looking at a policy level. But it could get into perhaps some high level design considerations.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question? Okay. Okay. Sorry, Renee, didn't see you.
I know I asked about this last year, so I'm going to ask it again because I don't think I understood the answer last year. But the 1% for Title VI and environmental justice, can you explain how that is applied, and then how, because 1% is not a lot of dollars,
Right.
how that is applied to individual projects?
Title VI is, on the Title VI side of that, it is very much a regulatory sort of thing where we make sure that we are fulfilling all our obligations, our Title VI obligations, and that can be as something as simple as making sure that on our agenda packets, we have the Title VI text on there that talks to how, as an organization, we don't discriminate based upon national origin, gender, et cetera. So it's very regulatory. On the environmental justice side, it gets a little bit more away from the regulatory, and it's put into real practice. And one example of that would be when we are analyzing projects that are going through the development process at NCDOT, with the environmental review process. We often serve on project teams. Comments are requested of us, those sorts of things. And we'll conduct an analysis. We have a degree of impact analysis that we developed a number of years ago, where we attempt to assess a project for its potential impact on environmental justice communities. So that's one way in which we use those dollars. And that can sometimes be done just as a part of that individual project, as opposed to something where we would bill our time to this particular task code. And then we also look at both the tip and the plan from that degree of impact perspective as well. Did I do better than last year?
I don't think that explains it better to me. I don't think I asked the right question last year.
Okay.
So it was on me, not on you. As we, as a board, are looking at these projects, we don't hear much detail on the environmental justice impact, in my opinion. Is that something as a board that we need to ask for in total, or is that something that I guess personally, I would like to hear more about that, especially as we look at I-77. And so I guess I would like to know.
I think it might be useful if at a future meeting, we go over the degree of impact analysis and demonstrate how we use it and in more detail and how we use it. I think that might be useful. I think it'll be helpful also because there are some changes to how Census Bureau is collecting information that's going to make it more challenging for us to conduct that analysis too. And I'd also add that we go through a certification review every 4 years that's conducted by USDOT. And one of the recommendations that came out of the most recent one was for us to look at more different qualitative and quantitative ways to assess environmental justice impacts. So I think it would be helpful maybe at a future meeting to highlight that topic.
Thank you. I know that would be helpful to me. I'm not sure about other board members, but I appreciate that.
And maybe, again, we're talking shorter time frame here as far as the availability of the time for that meeting. We only have one more meeting in between the March meeting, which you anticipate us giving approval. So is there a way that we could help Renee or anybody else in the room on a short little Cliff Note version of her question?
We can certainly, we have on our website, we have the degree of impact tool on there which describes the methodology. That would be a real easy thing to do, to send that out to everybody so they can see what we've done with that. And also perhaps include in there a link or some way in which you can see it where it's been used in the 2050 MTP.
Okay, that might help out a great deal. And if you guys together could make the effort, specifically since you're asking the question, then connect with Bob and his team. So we make sure, and anybody else in the room that needs to catch up to this as well. It's a very complicated process. So if we could add, even if we have a small little, we'll call it a seminar at some time in the near future, that would be great. So again, this is board involvement, board interacting with our staff to make sure that we understand and know at any given juncture what we're talking about and have clear definition and understanding about it. So appreciate the question. If we could just again have you guys communicate first, and then we'll go from there. And again, anybody else that wants to jump into that boat as well, please let Mr. Cook know. All right. Any other questions for Mr. Cook on this one? Haven't missed anybody around. Okay, you're up again.
Okay,
So this is the Charlotte urban area boundary.
yes.
Moving around.
That's moved a little bit. We were a little bit surprised. What we want to do here to talk about the urban area boundary, and there was a memo in your agenda packet, which I hope explained the issue as succinctly as we could possibly make it. It is a challenging topic, and we won't go into this in great detail tonight. I think we'll go into some level of detail, but I don't want to get too far into the weeds. I know we have another agenda item, and we're always willing to talk about this offline as well. But during this presentation, I want to talk a little bit about the definitions, an urban area or urban area boundary versus a planning area and a planning area boundary, because the two are related. They're very different, but they're very related. Talk about what happened, what, where, and why, and then talk about, show the urban area maps. So urban areas are defined by the Census Bureau, and they define them for statistical purposes, and that's really all they do. They don't care how anybody else uses this information. And many other agencies do use them. Federal agencies, state and local government uses them. I think some private sector entities uses the information as well. But the Census Bureau does it for its statistical purposes only, and how others use it, that's up to them. One of the users is the Federal Highway Administration. And for urban areas of 50,000 or more, the Federal Highway Administration says that those areas, because their transportation system, because of that population increase or meeting that threshold, has become reached a level of complexity that they have to start doing things a little bit differently in terms of planning for their transportation needs. You can't rely upon a state DOT anymore to do it. You have to really take some ownership of it at a local level. And a census designated urban area is the minimum planning area for any MPO that is established. The planning area boundary is an MPO's area of jurisdiction, and that is developed in cooperation with the state DOT, the Federal Highway Administration, of course, any local government. And the planning area is established in a way that it's more art than science. The urban area is the minimum planning area, as I mentioned before. And then you take that urban area and you smooth it to establish a more logical planning area. And also FHWA guidance states that we should include areas expected to be urban in 20 years. And do we have maps in the, I thought we had some maps in here.
In the packet.
Okay. I guess they didn't get put in here. Okay. So talk a little bit about what happened. The urban area population increased by a little over 130,000 people, but the urban area decreased by 109 square miles. So that's fairly substantial decrease in terms of the land area. I'll go into why. And so you can see the summary there at in the table, with a population increase 1.2 million to 1.37 million, and then 776 square miles down to 667 square miles. So just shy of 109 square miles. And just want to go over where that contraction occurred. So in Mecklenburg County, we lost about 10.3 square miles for an area that has been transferred over to the Gastonia urban area. That's in the vicinity of the Whitewater Center. And we don't know exactly why that occurred, but it did occur. And the Census Bureau, by the way, kind of gives us this information or gives everyone the information and then sort of walks away. And I don't mean to trash the Census Bureau in any way, because they develop it for their own purposes. So we don't always know exactly why those changes occurred. In Union County, we lost about 5.4 square miles. This is on the eastern side near Marshville. In Lincoln County, there was a portion of the Charlotte urban area in Lincoln County, and that is now classified as rural, and it's 17.6 square miles. For Catawba County, There was a small portion of Catawba County just over the Highway 150 bridge. It was 0.6 of a mile. That is now considered rural. And then in York and Lancaster County, we lost 35.7 square miles. That area has been transferred over to the Rock Hill urban area. And then Cabarrus County, there along the Mecklenburg-Cabarrus line, some of the Concord urban area now bleeds over into Mecklenburg County. We don't know why. So one thing, we have a few ideas though as to why it happened. The Census Bureau did change the criteria to designate urban areas. And there were two changes that likely affected the Charlotte urban area. One is it relates to the inclusion of non-contiguous territory. You can have a part of your urban, or you still can, you can have a part of your urban area that is not contiguous to the larger urban area, but still considered within it. And under previous urban area designation policies, you had these hop and jump standards that allowed for the inclusion of that area if it was even 2.5 miles away. Now it's been reduced to 1.5 miles. And this is what affected both Statesville and Marshville, both of them having coming out of the urban area. And then in terms of the qualifying urban area, that changed from 2,500 persons minimum threshold to 2,000 housing units or 5,000 persons. So a different approach to how density is established. So, okay, here are the maps. Okay. So here you see the Charlotte urban area, where Charlotte, the municipalities in the CRTPO planning area. And this depicts the 2010 Charlotte urbanized area, anything in purple there. So you can see it reaching up and grabbing Statesville to the north, and then Marshville to the east. And you can see those long lines, particularly there at Marshville, where it's kind of stretching out along Highway 74 from Wingate. And then this is in green is the 2020 Charlotte urbanized area. Statesville is out of the Charlotte urban area, as is Marshville down there to the east. And you can see that land area in York and Lancaster counties and Lincoln County as well, and then along the Cabarrus County line. So it's changed rather dramatically. We weren't the only MPO that lost size. Gaston, Cleveland, Lincoln MPO did. I think the Cabarrus Rowan MPO did as well. So you can see here then the planning area for the CRTPO and that heavier blue line, taking in all of Iredell County, most of Union County, and of course all of Mecklenburg as well. So that both the urban area and the planning area are very much related, but they are different entities created by different organizations. So that's where we stand at this point. There's still more to be learned from this. We are awaiting guidance from the Federal Highway Administration on how to proceed from this point forward. And we will come back to you at the February meeting with more information on this topic.
All right. A lot of information to digest and somewhat confusing, I'll have to say, on their analysis. So I will agree with that. So any thoughts, comments for Mr. Cook on this topic around the table? Not missing anybody? Thank you, Bob. Appreciate that. And we'll look forward to a very clear explanation of how it happened.
If we can get something on some of those areas, we'll provide it.
All right, appreciate that. All right, we'll talk about the NC DOT I-77 South proposal a little bit. And one of the reasons that we wanted to take a little bit of time today to talk about this a little bit is to make sure that all of our board members, including all of the new members, that they have as much of a head start as we could give them before we would make any type of decision in the future. But one of the things that we want to do is make crystal clear. I can't seem to yet convince the media on terminology yet on whether this is a managed lane project or this is a toll road or a whatever else they want to call it. But that just seems to, even as late as this afternoon, they're still calling it toll road. And so we want to make sure that this board is the one that has the most crystal clear information on what exactly we're up against to do this. And to recap a little bit, so this proposal came in, I believe, a year ago, February. And it's what is commonly referred to as an unsolicited proposal. And so first off, I'm going to hand this over to Mr. Burke to give you a little bit of a timeline to catch some of you up and a little bit of reminder so we understand. So go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this slide just basically depicts all of the meeting dates in 2022 where the I-77 South unsolicited proposal was discussed. As Mr. Chair mentioned, NCDOT staff first made us aware of the unsolicited proposal at the March 23rd board meeting of 2022. Then July 20th of 2022, the chair was the presenter, and the action requested was to direct the TCC to analyze the I-77 South corridor and prepare findings of fact in response to that receipt of the unsolicited proposal. So that put in motion an effort between our staff, NCDOT staff, and the TCC to analyze the 77 South corridor in terms of traffic volume, safety issues, cost, and methods to actually deliver the project and the history of this project as it's appeared in our plans. So we came back during the August 17th board meeting to update the board on the data collection efforts involved in that analysis and the coordination with NCDOT following that board action on July 20th. And then at the September 21st meeting in 2022, there was a joint presentation between CRTPO staff and NCDOT on the results of the I-77 South corridor analysis and the presentation of findings of fact. One of the requests that came out of that meeting from the board during the September meeting was to learn a little more about NCDOT's processes to evaluate unsolicited proposals. So during the October 19th board meeting, we had the NC Turnpike Authority Chief Financial Officer David Roy and Brett Knight from NCDOT talk about NCDOT's process when they receive an unsolicited proposal for a public-private partnership. How do they evaluate that? And they also outlined the potential next steps if the CRTPO board requests NCDOT to review this unsolicited proposal. And then at the November meeting, our last meeting in 2022, the board chair provided a summary of an NCDOT follow-up letter. There were several questions posed during that October 19th meeting that NCDOT and the Turnpike Authority needed some more time to gather an accurate response. So NCDOT did provide that letter, and Chair Pappas did kind of do an overview presentation of what the contents of that letter were.
There's a lot, again, of information that has come by us. Are you going to do the timeline as well? Do you wanna do that?
Well, that's the timeline. The next slide is, staff has worked with Chair Pappas and Vice Chair Qualls to develop a potential action requested should the board be ready during the February 15th meeting. And we talked about this, and I think that there was an agreement that it's almost been a year since we've become aware of the unsolicited proposal. So we thought we would put this in front of the board today. And if it's okay with leadership, I'll just kind of summarize what's on the screen.
Please do.
But if it's acceptable to the CRTPO board, we propose that the action requested at the February 15th meeting would be for the board to direct a response to NCDOT regarding a decision about the unsolicited proposal. And what this would do is this would put into motion NCDOT to perform an initial screening of the unsolicited proposal in accordance with the requirements and expectations defined in NCDOT's public-private partnerships, policies, and procedures document. It would also put into motion NCDOT conducting a comparative analysis of potential P3 and traditional public options delivered through the North Carolina Turnpike Authority through the traditional toll project delivery process. And from what we understand, this would evaluate the risk, the financial feasibility, the benefit, cost, and value for money. And then finally, that action, if taken by the board next month, would also form a working group consisting of NCDOT, North Carolina Turnpike Authority, and CRTPO staff to really kind of provide a, week to week or maybe even a day to day sounding board regarding how this analysis is unfolding.
So in the past few months, we've all been, most of us, except for those who are new on here, have seen presentations by DOT and some of our staff as well, identifying some timelines on what could happen next. And I think sometimes the media gets a little bit carried away because of the, I guess, the disappointment in the first go around of the I-77 provider. This is not about the provider. And we want to be crystal clear about that. We want to understand that we're not leapfrogging just because it's a unsolicited proposal from this provider, which anybody can do. Anybody could submit an unsolicited proposal. The next step would be for us, obviously, to give to the DOT the authorization to go and look at the feasibility of the project. That's what this is going to be about. So I don't want to let anybody go away at any point in time confused about what our next action steps would be. From there, they would do their work, might take some time. They might not come back to us for a period of time. Where's Brett over there somewhere, one side of the table? There he is, hiding in the corner again. But he just doesn't want the arrows again. That's what he's hiding over there for. But we want to make sure that the project gets consideration. It is an important project as far as a project goes. What happens next is, I'm told that everything in government is a process. It will go through a process. We, as a CRTPO board, have input, almost exit ramps, if you will, on the entire process. We can technically abort the project at any given time, reasonably said, obviously. But we want to make sure that we're crystal clear that this is a proposal that we would need to look at. And it doesn't have anything to do with the provider. That provider, if there's going to be comments on a provider, that is way down the line, if any at all. Now, I understand from the Secretary of the DOT that there has been a lot more interest this time around on people who could be potential providers for us. So, and as I said last time in our last meeting here in November, we were going to have to one day face the fact that how do we fund this project? The project seems to, even presentations by DOT and their staff and our staff, and even some of the conversations that have been had with the Met County and also the city of Charlotte. This is a project that's been on the boards for now since 2007. And so we still haven't provided a mechanism to fund it. Doesn't mean that it's going to get funded right away. It's in the current STIP as a managed lane project, has been in the STIP as a managed lane project since inception in 2007. So this is not a surprise to anybody. We need to look at, since DOT does have some financial constraints, we need to consider if we can give them an option down the road. But that's solely going to be after a review of the feasibility and viability of the project, and then comes the financial analysis next. So that's going to be, again, your consideration for all of us to make, and I'd like to make that next month, but I wanted to make sure at this meeting, since we have some new people, that we can provide them as much information through the fire hose, if you will, that they can get up to speed as much as they can. And if we can, Bob and Neil, if we can get them access to the slideshows, the slide deck that we had by both presenters from DOT last time, if we can help that process out a little bit, you guys can catch up. And then I would like to make sure that there's an open opportunity once you get that you can come back in and ask the questions. Preferably, if you can, we'd like to get you informed as early as we can. So if we gave you this information, say tonight, you could review it as fast as you could, then come back with questions, comments, and thoughts like that, because that's what it's going to take. We need to get you up to speed. And I don't see any reason we've beat this thing to death for almost a year now. And I think we fully understand that there's a need. How do we provide that need? How do we assist in providing that need? And the first step to providing a need is to understand the project. And that's would be the ask next time around.
And Ron, just to be clear, you're talking about the October presentation with the CFO of the Turnpike Authority?
Yeah, the Turnpike Authority and I think Brett and I forgot who gave the presentation with Brett. It was
Brett and Travis?
And Travis, I
Yeah,
think.
okay.
Those presentations, they define in graphics the timelines of how this project has come to be. And it's, again, it's one of those things sitting on the books for now 16 years. No, that's a long time. We should have either done something about it, which is not necessarily the option. And now it's gonna be a little bit more costly. So again, this is informational today. We want to make sure that you guys can have that opportunity to have comment, questions, whenever. And then when we come back next month, see if we can get through that process and get this off our plate. So I think Craig was over there first, and then I'll jump to Lee and then over here. So Craig.
I think I understand the process, but what I don't know is what's it going to cost even as these steps move out and who pays. As you mentioned, DOT is under some, like all of us necessarily should be under some fiscal constraints. No, not a bottomless pit of money. I also realize, and I think this needs to be in the mix. There are some things that we're probably gonna have to know early, but we're gonna have to know whether, if we go forward, we're gonna have to know them anyway. So someone might say, well, we really can't afford this study, but let's move ahead. Well, to move ahead, we have to have that study. So I'm kind of looking for, in addition to what are the steps, what are the decision-making decision points, I'm also looking for what it's going to cost to do these, where the money's going to come from, when will that money be available? So that's, I would ask that you include that in the briefing before any vote on anything.
And you're talking specifically when we refer to cost, you're asking about the cost to do the analysis? Is that what we're asking?
That's certainly, if we decide to move ahead, there's going to be some activity has to be performed. That activity to be performed by someone that's already doing something else. So they stop doing something else to do this, or by someone new. And in either case, there's new funding requirements thrust upon the people that do this. What are those funding requirements? And where's the money coming from? I'm not at all, this is not intended to be any kind of a roadblock. I'm just trying to understand the bigger picture.
Fully.
Even to go to a study means we have to expend some money.
And let's define we. So I'm going to ask Brett to come up to give us a little bit of the process. If you could, Brett, could you step up a little bit and maybe go to the podium?
Mean to jump on you.
That's okay. He's used to it. Yeah, go ahead.
So I think the question was, Mayor Horn, where would, what's it going to cost? Where would the money come from to conduct an analysis, right?
When you've got a budget, you got to work within. That means you've got to start moving things around.
I would try to frame it like this. We, as the chairman has pointed out, we have an active TIP project for I-77 South for that segment of roadway. It's I-5718. So we're already actively expending money on analysis, preliminary designs. All that preliminary engineering work is currently ongoing. So although this is my first round of having to contend with an unsolicited proposal, it would seem to me that those funds would in all likelihood to conduct an analysis of an active project could easily come from those same coffers. Now, I want to confirm that, but again, it is preliminary engineering work, just similar to the work we're already doing, except we would be exploring and analyzing this unsolicited proposal.
I'm just trying to be sensitive to the fact that you've got fiscal constraints. You've got to get 10 pounds of poop in a 2-pound bag. And perhaps there's some way we can help get you a 10-pound bag.
Hey, extra money is always nice, right? It would be great to have a little more to work with. I don't see that as being a big roadblock up front when I think about the larger scope of our overall program and, what we're trying to deliver across the state. The preliminary engineering side of our business, certainly it costs money to get to the point where we can have a set of plans to build a highway project with, right? Without having definite information in front of me, I can't necessarily quantify it, but I can say that it would be an expenditure, that's very similar to the work we're already doing in the same vein, if you will.
I'm trying to get across, and I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, for not going through the chair, but I'm trying to get across is that everything costs money. There are lots of things I'd like to do, but I just can't afford it. Lots of I'd like to add things to my house, but I can't now. I'm gonna have to wait a while. How's that impact you and your organization?
Sure. Well, maybe if you make it to the, compare it to the house analogy, if we're trying to figure out what we can afford to do on our house, right? What can we afford to, what upgrades can we make? So we have to do some level of work to figure that out. And this is a very, very early step in this analysis. Yeah.
I don't want to lose sight of the fact that somebody's got to sign a check someplace.
That's right. Yep. It is going to cost money, no doubt.
And it will, and I'll share a little bit what I did one other time. So in my business, there's sometimes I'll look at 25 different projects during a year, and I may be only able to do 3 of them after all my analysis. I have reserves in my personal budget to make sure that I can look at these properties, and they take a lot of time. They do as well. This is not something that's going to be, oh, a surprise, we're going to look at something different. They're already in that process right now, and they're funding it out. Now, I'm not going to submanage their business. I'll leave that to the treasurer and the secretary to battle out, but the money is going to come from their side.
Well, as you know, I served in the General Assembly. We would, in the General Assembly, would often task an agency with doing something, but not provide the money for them to do it.
Small details. I think that DOT probably has some funds to allocate. This isn't new to them. And so again, I don't want to get into co-managing their budgets and budgets in business. Make sure that they can. So I haven't heard anything from the secretary or even the treasurer when he wrote $1 billion check last week to DOT. I didn't hear anything about, gee, we can't afford it. So anyway, I don't know that I'd worry about that right now. That's not in our area to worry about how they manage themselves. So if that's fair enough. So, okay. Lee, you had a question.
So thank you, Mayor. I understand from what you've said that what we would be called upon next month is to vote on authorizing DOT to screen the proposal and do a comparative analysis. And if that's all we're being asked to do, I certainly want to continue to collect information and move the process forward because we do need a solution for our residents. And what I'm also hearing from you is that it will be crystal clear that not sort of de facto by us voting for it or sort of unofficially. And in neither sense will the potential provider down the road be solidified or identified or in any way encouraged by that vote. Is my understanding correct?
You would be understanding that correctly from my understanding of it. But what I want to say is that, again, we might be faced with down the road that this current provider might be the provider, but we want to make sure that if that is the hand that we're dealt, that we want to make sure that we understand their processes and not make, as you said earlier, and we talked earlier about not making the same mistakes twice. Now, I understand that there are other providers that are very, very interested in this. We'll let that process fall in the purview of the DOT. They have to make that. But until we get to that point of analysis, a complete analysis, it's all moved.
Understood. And also, the other thing I would want to be clear about, I've heard from a couple elected officials, some word that the state treasurer was, and this is, really third or fourth hand. So I recognize it. It may have no merit at all, but I want to clear up for myself and dispel if necessary, any sort of insinuation that, quote, we don't need to consider this because the state treasurer has funds which may be able to be released to do this project. It sounds fanciful, but I've heard it a couple times now. And so I just want to address it publicly so we can be very clear if that help is available. And if it isn't, then we know that we do need to continue down the track that we've been discussing.
I'm going to lean on my cohort, Mr. Ed over there. He's had a direct conversation, as I have too, with the treasurer. So there was some information that was stated out in the media and by some of colleagues around us that talked about, we got lots of money, we can just spend it. Ed.
So I've had a couple of conversations with the treasurer. He asked questions, I think, and expressed sort of uncertainty about some things. I don't remember hearing him say, hey, we've got the money, so what's the problem, or anything resembling that. And frankly, it's not within his authority to make decisions about that kind of an allocation of funds. Those decisions are made in the legislature. So I don't think he would want to be characterized as having said, don't bother with this, we have the money, it'll be fine. He asked some questions and expressed an opinion. I don't think that's anything that should sway us from our work. And if he wants to weigh in again, or from his perspective as the treasurer, express concerns, then he can do so. But I haven't heard him say that in an official capacity or publicly. He's had conversations with a number of us, I think, privately. And I didn't come away with that impression about his position. So, Mr. Chair, if I may, for one, for the benefit of the countless reporters that are walking and are probably still confused, I think it's worth clarifying that a toll road is a road on which everybody pays the same amount of money to use any of the lanes. Think about a toll plaza or something like that. Mr. Cooksey, okay, just sit still, okay? The managed lanes we're talking about are lanes that would be created in addition to free lanes, with the free lanes remaining free. The use of the managed lanes would be available to those who choose to use it in order to get through more quickly. It's an express lane kind of thing. And the cost of using those lanes is determined by an algorithm based on the amount of traffic on the road, such that the number of cars using the managed lanes can always travel at a certain speed. So generally speaking, they're very different models. And if you don't want to use a managed lane and you don't want to pay to use the road, you don't have to. It's simply available, again, at a price that you see on the signs overhead, that you may use if it's worth it to you to get through more quickly in a crowded road situation. So it provides some relief from the free lanes, and that benefits the users of the free lanes. But there is no implication that you can't ride on that road for free if you want to. So just wanted to mention that. Now about this, I think a lot of the reason that the discussion has gone on for as long as it has, particularly in the context of the unsolicited proposal, is everybody's looking a little bit warily at the possibility of a repeat, let's put it that way, of what happened before. And I think there was enough controversy about what happened before for us to consider that possibility with some concern. So the question is, what is the significance of allowing that initial screening? And I was interested in the wording up there, unsolicited proposal. So it doesn't say proposals, and it doesn't say an unsolicited proposal. There's actually a little bit of an ambiguity in the way that is written, but I think we all know that there is only one unsolicited proposal. So in my mind, you could say no to number one and yes to number two up there. And you could say, continue to conduct comparative analysis of potential P3 delivery, continue to work on the whole thing, don't discard the P3 option, but you're not necessarily going to continue screening that one proposal you got, or you might. I'm not really even expressing an opinion, but just for the sort of clarity, if we vote next month, what does it mean if we say no to whatever the question is? What does that mean? Does that mean, don't work on it anymore, exclude the P3 possibility, exclude that particular company that submitted the unsolicited proposal? So I hope when this comes up for our decision, that we understand exactly what we're deciding. Are we deciding that we do not want that unsolicited proposal to move forward, possibly positioning that company in a better place from any RFP competitors subsequently? Or are we saying, don't look at P3 any longer? I think from prior conversations that there isn't a sentiment around this table that we should not consider a P3, because we went through that whole thought process. You know, you can do nothing, or you could wait for 30 years, or you can do a P3. And so I think a P3 is probably something we all want to look at, or most of us. The bigger question is around the unsolicited proposal and what further work is done on that, and what the significance of that is. And if anybody disagrees with that, let me know. But I'm just hoping that the question that gets pushed to us next month is very clear and is sensitive to all the issues around the prior project.
A lot to be said in that. I'm going to lean on Brett for a little bit there and kind of talk about the process and again, maybe further clarify two things. You're right, Ed, that, you know, the treasurer doesn't necessarily have a clear understanding of DOT's needs and requirements. There's X amount of money in the DOT budget, and that's managed by DOT. And so they have allocations and commitments for some of that money. So say if for the sake of conversation, they had $8 billion to spend, it isn't $8 billion in cash just sitting there doing nothing. It's mostly committed to something else already. So we have to understand that part of it.
And Mr. Chair, to that, there is a trust fund. There is a very complicated process through which the available funds are determined, and the timeline for their availability to be used in projects is adopted through a STIP. And we look at some of the projects in the STIP here. And again, I don't want to say anything against the treasurer. I think he does a fabulous job.
Does a great job.
But I don't think it was his intention to get identified as a decision maker or as having a really strong view about how this is being done.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And having, you know, been able to have personal conversations with them last week and with the secretary, that's my takeaway as well. But Brett, if you could go back and talk to this group again about what this means to give you, your organization, the authority to take that next step.
So yeah, specifically, if this board decides to ask NCDOT to analyze this unsolicited proposal, we would simply be doing just that, analyzing the proposal. We would be checking it, trying to determine if it meets some very basic criteria. Then, you know, potentially moving on to a next phase of analysis where, you know, it's determined, is it feasible? Is a P3 feasible here? Does it really make sense? And so I know that's a short way of describing it, but that's essentially what we would be doing if we're asked to analyze it. And I don't know if there was a specific question that you wanted me to try to address.
Well, just looking at it, it doesn't go much beyond that. So the analysis happens, then you come back and report.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You know, it's an analysis and we stop and we come back.
So would your analysis of the potential P3 delivery as referred to in bullet 2 be made with reference to the unsolicited proposal? Or would it be a first principles assessment of the P3s as they might happen, and with the expectation that there would be an RFP and that our partner in the P3, would we have significant engagement with Sintra in the screening of their proposal?
So it is more of an analysis of the concept of any P3 model, not specifically this proposal. Elements of the proposal may be verified, you know, on its own merits, but if you go to the point where you complete a final analysis, it's analyzing whether or not a P3 is a sustainable, real, tangible option. The end outcome, if and again, NCDOT is not going to, and NCTA, we're not going to make any steps without the approval of this board. So let's say we analyze the proposal, it's determined, or analyze the P3 scenario, and it's determined that it is viable. Then a public bid would have to take place. The only difference would be that the central proposal would be shortlisted for review. That's the extent of it.
So you don't believe, if I may, Mr. Chair, you don't believe that Sintra would establish for itself any sort of preferred position in the subsequent RFP process by
Well,
virtue
they
of
would
having had their
automatically be
proposal
shortlisted.
assessed like that?
They would automatically be shortlisted. Yeah,
Okay, but other people could get shortlisted too. but,
absolutely. It would have to be put out. for
I'll just tell you
public bid.
personally, my concern is I think we should get the benefit of whatever we can learn from their proposal. But my concern is just that they not establish a position for themselves that makes it really uninviting for others to try to compete because of an assumption that Sintra already has a lock on this business.
Understood.
Chair.
Okay. Thank you.
Complete
Thank
on
you.
that.
I appreciate Mr. Driggs' comments and questions, but also we're in a unique situation, I believe, where we have experience with this provider. So that when we look at financial feasibility, we should also be looking at how the current project compares. I think that's a very strong position to be in to judge that project.
And again, as to Brett's comments, I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong on this, I mean, so when you say shortlisted on it, sure, they're added to the list because they're probably qualified and capable, we'll call it just that. But if there are other qualified and capable providers, then now that analysis is comparable. And we want to make sure that we have that comparative analysis where it was perceived before that it didn't happen. So we'd want to make sure that, at least from that standpoint, that the project is looked at. But as I said, even last meeting that we had, when it shakes out at the end, we have to look at whether or not we want the project. And if we want the project, how good are we at doing our jobs to make sure what might have happened before or the constraints that we are facing today don't ever happen again. And so I'm going to feel that we, again, just speaking from my experience as a developer, I'm going to, if I have to go back to a same subcontractor, but I didn't like the first job he did, I'm going to go back and have a really long conversation about it. So what we get at the end result, is not what we're experiencing today. So I'm going to hope that certainly DOT and their crew is going to be experienced enough now with this process that when it comes down to it, they're going to come back to us and say, here's our findings. And then we're able to make that decision. Rusty.
And I'm going to direct this to you, Brent, because I don't know and I want to know. And I'm going back, I'm a pack rat, so I'm in my notes from October 19th meeting and some numbers that stood out. This project is estimated to be $2.1 billion. The state has a cap of $650 million on any project. So that leaves a $1.5 billion shortfall on this project. So it's set up under the rubric that it is right now, where can the state do it? Sure, and deliver it in 25 or 30 years.
Maybe.
Or go with the P3 or a partner and get it done a lot sooner, which it needs to be done sooner than later. I don't think any of us can argue with the constraints that we have on both of our corridors that bisect Mecklenburg County and the larger region as well. So, but who established that $650 million cap? Is the legislature the one that does that? And can that be changed?
So to clarify, what that is, Mayor Knox, is that is the corridor cap that's identified in the STI legislation. So it is in fact established by the legislature. The law says that we can expend on the statewide tier fund category in any one corridor that crosses division lines. So this would include a cap for any project on I-77 for any 5-year period. I believe the number is like 10% of the projected revenue available to fund the statewide tier category. So that approximate $650 million number is the amount that could be expended on I-77 for all statewide tier projects over any given 5-year period. So I think if you go back, review the presentations, you'll see that there's scenarios laid out where it explains that, you could expend, say, the 650 in the first 5 years. Year 6, could you theoretically expend another 650? Yes, theoretically. Again, that's all relevant to available funds and how this project could rank and score as an STI project to become fully funded for construction. So it still would have to compete through that process.
Okay.
But the answer to your question is yes, it's in legislation.
Okay.
Lisa, you had a question?
And you just brought that up, Brett, on my question as far as, if you find that this is viable and yeah, we want to move this on to P3 into the STIP, this does have to compete again to even get into the statewide. What's
So-
a kind of a timeline of a realistic,
It needs, in order to be eligible for construction funds, it still has to compete in the STIP. So in P7, it would automatically recompete with other projects that were previously funded. So it was previously committed project. I'll probably remember we had several projects that were no longer committed. I-77 project was one of those. So it will recompete in P7. And if it would be selected for funding, depending upon where it fell, where it ranked out, and the amount of actual available funds would determine its sort of place in line where funding could theoretically start coming to the project for construction. So,
and P7 is going to start when?
the submittal window is about to start up this year, this summer. I think we've got to adopt the current STIP, but then P7 would wind up creating the next round in 2 years. The next STIP would come online in 2 years after that.
So realistically, we vote next month, however, whatever we choose to say, move forward on, if we do. And you go through all of this analysis, feasibility, yada, 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 it's not even going to get presented as a project. Whoever's going to present it, whether it's NCDOT, into P7, that's then a 2-year process before you're ever going to know.
Before we know when the funding, where it ranks out in funding. Now, we'll have a good notion ahead of that because we're going to see how the scores come in. So we would have, information to use to help guide us and make decisions.
But the scoring takes, to get to
The
the.
scoring
once the
was much
project-
quicker than the actual adoption of a new STIP,
But still, it's like a year.
close to it.
Yeah. So we're 2024.
Yeah.
In a great world before we even know if it's going to score. So the longer we continue to just kick this around, it just continues to go out. So as people think, oh, this is going to start next month or in a year, we don't even know if it's going to score for another year.
Right.
Against statewide projects.
Right.
And we won't know that until we look. So, all right, Rob?
Yeah, Brett, we talked a lot about, looking at P3 projects and then the unsolicited offer. Let's say this board decides direct NCDOT, move forward, take a look at it. Things work out a year down the line, funding's there. Does this board have any say in the contract? Or is that a state and NCDOT? That's their discretion, and we are just sitting back and let it roll.
I would say that, yeah, we would take input from this board to some level. To sit here today and figure out if we, to what detail we would be able to set the terms of the contract with input from this board, it would be difficult to say, but I want to say openly that, yeah, we would take input from this board. I mean, we want to hear the concerns, do what we could to incorporate local concerns into our work.
And I asked this because that was go back to the Northern project. That was one of the biggest concerns. It was the contract was signed, sealed, delivered. Very few people got to look at it. And by the time they did, it was, 50-year, done deal. At least at the municipality levels. So that's why I'm asking that question. So thank you.
So I would say to a point, okay?
And I think that we've had such a cooperative dialogue now with DOT. I won't say that I can't imagine, but I can't imagine that they wouldn't consider our input, especially in light of prior experience, no matter who the end provider would be. So if it wasn't the current provider, the same concerns are going to be addressed in the next go around with no matter who it is. So again, we won't know that until we start to look at the project. And I think that's what I want everybody to be crystal clear on, what the ask will be, is to look at the project. Let them do their analysis, go from there. I'm not advocating one way or another. I'm just saying we should look at it. So anyway, any other thoughts, questions, comments on it? All right, you guys got your homework to do as well. On this topic, we want to make sure that the new members of this board can get information that they need quickly. If we could, if you guys could help facilitate that at the staff level, get that to them. Any questions that you guys might have in this short fuse, this window that we have, please communicate back to staff. You want to be the contact?
Yes.
Okay, so Neil will be your contact for information, questions like that. Lisa and I will be also available for any discussions that we have on it. We're again just trying to make sure that we're not in a spot where in 45, 50 more years, we're going to be having the same discussion, whether they're going to look at it or not. I don't know that Ed and I are going, yeah, we won't be around necessarily, but we want to make sure that this project, since it's been on the boards for 16 years, that we want to make sure we give it a look. So anyway, that would be mine. All right, upcoming agenda items. Mr. Burke, you're up again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the February 15th board meeting, we have the following items identified for action. Obviously, action will be requested on what we were just discussing regarding the NCDOT I-77 South unsolicited proposal. Action will also be requested of the board to approve funding allocations and amend the transportation improvement program for funding to include funding from the 2022 CRTPO discretionary recommended project list. There will also be an action request to approve the revised public involvement plan. That had a public comment period that will close as of this evening. There have not been any public comments submitted to date regarding the updates to the plan. So we propose putting that on our consent agenda for next month. There will also be an endorsement of an NCDOT paved trails application for Iredell County and for the Carolina Thread Trail that we're also proposing to put on the consent agenda. As far as information reports during the February 15th board meeting, we have a second update on the draft 2024 Unified Planning Work Program update. We will have an update on the 2024 through 2033 Transportation Improvement Program adoption by CRTPO, and we will have an update on the transit work group. And then I just have a few additional announcements here. On March 15th, before that board meeting, we will hold a CRTPO celebration. This is something we've wanted to do for a few years in a row now. This will start at 4 and go until 6. It's basically just a save the date at this point. We're still working on details, but we want to celebrate you all as a board, your member jurisdictions and involvement, but also, what all the work we did during the pandemic, the great work we did in terms of the strategic plan beyond 77, the 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So this will be a social gathering prior to the March 15th board meeting. We plan on holding it in the lobby on the first floor. We'll have light beverages and things like that. Just a gathering to be thankful for all of our hard work over the last few years. And once that meeting starts at 6 p.m., we will have an education session on the 2020 census process and the effort to update the CRTPO's memorandum of understanding. So that education session will begin immediately following the celebration at 6 p.m. Then we'll go into the regular board agenda. And I believe that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right, very good. And to kind of add to that, dropping down to the board member comments and we'll allow that, but the NCDOT summit was actually just a great summit this year. And there, the input that we've had and the relationships that we're able to establish over there were probably better than it's been in a long time. And the energy that was in the room, Tony was there, obviously, the energy that was in the room was probably higher than I've seen it in years and decades. And so it's a nice event to go to. So if we have another one next year, I would encourage as many of you to go to get again a better understanding on how that organization works and the projects that they look at statewide. I was very, not surprised, but pleasantly surprised of the involvement of the Economic Development Group for the state of North Carolina in all of the projects that they bring to us as a state. There's a new battery plant by Toyota coming in. There's a Vietnamese auto manufacturer that's coming in. Those are great economic drivers for the state. And so again, we have to be, and the more that we are aware of projects like that, it helps us better plan for the roadway systems that are going to connect to all those things. Those particular ones happen to be up in the north end towards Raleigh, but we're going to be affected by that because of the Charlotte region growing so fast and so much. A couple other things, just a couple of notes. There is a Connect Beyond Advancing the Plan subcommittee, and I'm going to be on that committee as this representative. The first meeting is actually on Friday, but I will not be able to be there because of my community, my town board retreat is this next 2 days. So, but I will be that representative. That's on Friday, the 27th. And then we're also, as was alluded to a little earlier on the memorandum of understanding, we're going to have a task force that we'd like to engage those who want to be involved in. I know Rob would like to be involved, and that we'd like to have some more members contact Neil and ask to be considered to be involved on that board. We had a short list earlier this month, but we thought we'd get more input from the new members that might want to engage on it as well. So give that some thought and understanding. And if you are interested in further serving and helping out our board make these decisions, again, we're being asked to have input to the memorandum of understanding. I'll take that all day long. So if you've got some thoughts and comments about that, please let Mr. Burke know and he'll go from there. Tony, you had a comment.
Just really quick about that summit, just to plant the seed for next year. In addition to Ron's good comments, I just would point out that we had over 1,000 people there from every aspect of the transportation. I know Jim Walker was there, Turnpike Authority, every aspect of the transportation industry in North Carolina, including a huge number of NCDOT staff, but most significantly around the conversations we're having about how to pay for stuff. What has been established now is an ongoing statewide robust conversation about how to pay for transportation. And we had legislators there. We had a panel of legislators from the state treasurer, Dale Falwell, talking about that. And so if you want to be around that conversation, this is a real center of activity for that. And I would encourage you to just stick it in the back of your mind for next year.
And there might also be an opportunity to view some of that. I have to check with Carly yet, but there might be some video of that our people might be able to click a link and then watch them. But very interesting and very dynamic conversations that were had, not only in the breakout rooms, but in the general sessions. Very exciting. We are a growing state. We are a destination. I think now we're 5th in the nation as far as the growth that's happening right now. And that's going to impact us, no doubt. And now what do we do about it? How do we manage it? How do we provide? It takes an understanding from all of us, and I have faith in all of us to come up with solutions, much like the dialogue we had on that corridor. I mean, I think that's what it's going to take to be able to help us move forward instead of keep looking at something negative and never achieve anything over 25 years. So we probably need to stop doing that. We need to be an active board. So I'm going to ask any other comments, thoughts for the good of the group before we dismiss tonight? All right, you guys are all ready to go home, I can tell.
So, all right, move to adjourn. Second, gone.
Thank you.